Yo, what's up guys? We're here with another history of the Yu-Gi-Oh player, and this time we're joined by someone from across the pond here who's pretty well known for our American viewers here. And today we're with Mr. Ryan Levine. How are you today?
I'm good.
That's great. That's great.
So should I just start, or do you have more?
No,
Sorry.
no, no. I mean, like this is your platform, so go from here if you'd like to. I mean, usually I have like a timeline of sorts I'd like to go through. So I mean, just as a kind of
Okay.
initial kind of thought here, who are you? Why are you well known in the Yu-Gi-Oh community? Where did you come from, kind of thing.
Okay. So my name is Ryan Levine. I'm an East Coast U.S. player. I guess right now I have four YCS tops, two of which being top four, but I'm bad, so I can't win in top four. And then four ARG tops, one of which being a win with that stupid PSY-Frame deck that I will eventually get into. I just joined the Cart Guys last month, and yeah, it's been. I've been trying to get more involved in the community, so I guess this is one way I'm gonna try to get my name out there a little bit more. Before I go into like why I started playing, there is just one thing I don't want to. I want to spend maybe like a minute on this. Yesterday, there was an Asnai's video released, and I don't want to talk about the video. I don't want to talk about him. Like he can do whatever he wants. He can make videos about whatever he wants. The one thing I want to address is about halfway through it, he used a clip of me in a deck profile, and the way I saw it, he took an out of context like sound clip of me saying something, like, and skewed that to make me agree with the point he was trying to make, which I don't necessarily agree with. So he can do whatever he wants. I just would like to set the record straight that I don't necessarily agree with what he was saying just because he used a video of me speaking out of context.
Before we go any further, what
So yeah.
exactly did he say, and what did he
Um,
make you say, kind of thing?
sure. So he had a video about it was about like in top four of YCS Liverpool, like in top four the ABC guy misplayed. Like he made a Utopia Prime, thinking he could do it on his opponent's Chaos Hunter, but Utopia Prime includes an effect to banish, so it can't activate. What he could have done is he could have booked the Eclipse first and then made Utopia Prime and then like probably won. But I don't. But I guess he didn't realize that even if a monster's flip face down, it's still considered like special summoned. So Utopia Prime can still kill it. And then he made a whole video about like ABC being easy and whatever. And then of a regional deck profile from a regional I topped last week, and like I'll let him explain it, and then clicked, and then
Sorry, one sec, Ryan. I think you're
it
having
was a clip
some
of me saying, and then
connectivity
he went. Oh,
issues.
sure.
Have you got any lag or anything?
Oops. Uh,
Just one
I
sec.
don't
I'll check
think
if it's
so.
coming from me. Let me just turn off anything extra I've got here.
Oh, okay. It says I'm. It said I was at red, but now it says I'm fine. Is this? Oh, damn
Just give it a second, stabilize.
it. All right. Sure.
Let me try and move you around actually, see if it changes in. Hello, hello.
Yeah.
All right, we seem good. All
Can you
right,
hear me?
yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. So
So
you were
what's the last thing
talking
you were gonna
about
say?
so the last thing you said was talking about the regional you topped and how he used the clip from there.
Okay, so he played a clip of me, and the clip he just played like the deck profile was like 19 minutes long. He played like a 6 minute clip of me saying, and then you summon Buster, and then you just win, like for no reason. And then he's like, "See, look, ABC's like takes no skill," and what I was saying, like I was explaining how Union Hanger. I said I think Union Hanger might be the most powerful spell currently legal. And I was saying like if you can just you don't have to open the combo of like Tsukiyomi. If you just have a Union Hanger and like a trap so you don't die, then sometimes you can just snowball it. Like if they can't kill your guy, you're like special C, equip B, make a rank 4, like make Buster, and then you can just like win, like for no reason. Like I wasn't I did not say ABC is you make Buster and win for no reason. It was part of a more elaborate thought of like you can just sometimes spin like one card into a victory if they can't answer it.
Yeah.
Which was, I think.
I mean, if you
like,
take 5 seconds of any clip, it's gonna sound like horrible
Yeah.
out of context.
That
in
was what I was
regards.
like. That's what I mean. Is just like I don't like he can make a video about whatever he wants. I don't care. Like I don't have like anything like against him. I just didn't like that he took a relatively out of like a relatively short clip of mine and tried to make it say something I wasn't saying. That's
Yeah.
all I had an issue with. But I don't want to talk about that anymore. I don't. That was just something that bothered me.
Sure, no problem.
And I figured this was an opportunity to explain it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I just wanted to ask really quick though, was there any reason like he chose you specifically? I mean, do you know him?
I have no idea. No, I don't. I have literally no idea.
If you never
Which is why it was
with
so weird. Nope, never.
Oh, okay. Well,
which is why it was so odd.
All right, that's fair enough. Well, moving on. I guess let's just begin at the beginning. Tell us about your career and how you got into Yu-Gi-Oh and so on.
Okay. So most of like the relevant things I've done were not until like 2015, but there's start a little bit before that to explain like how bad I was, like just how atrocious I was at this game for so long, and like how far I've like climbed, which is just like it doesn't like I guess to show like it doesn't matter if you think you're bad, like you can get better if you just like want to. So like most people, I think my first experience with Yu-Gi-Oh was like the Yugi and Kaiba structure decks. I didn't know how to like play. I just like had one of them, and like one of my friends had the other one, but we never really got into it. I actually played the Pokemon CCG. Like I went to locals for like maybe a year when I was in like kindergarten or something, and like my sister did too. So we played that, and then I didn't really like play any card games for a while until like elementary school, maybe like 4th or 5th grade. A friend of mine, for some reason, like saw some new Yu-Gi-Oh products coming out, and he thought it was cool, and like showed it to me. And so the first time I really played Yu-Gi-Oh and like learned the rules, I think Enemy of Justice was the newest set, which was like 2006, 2007. I don't remember exactly, but it was like Goat Control like just finished. This was like maybe 2 sets after Goat Control. And I was bad. Like I played Elemental Heroes, like the anime Elemental Heroes with like Burstinatrix and Sparkman and like Avion, and like literally activated Polymerization and Miracle Fusion to make Flame Wingman. Like that was my deck. I don't think I even owned like Shining Flare Wingman. I literally owned like Flame Wingman and like Thunder Giant. And like that was that was my deck I played at locals and like lost repeatedly week after week. So then we got a couple more of our friends into it, and then Cyber Dragon was the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh at this point for anybody who's like keeping track. So, and I didn't own that card, so my deck was very bad. So I just got like scraped like weekly, like without mercy. And then eventually, you know, like new decks would come out. Like I would play new bad decks. I played like like Destiny Heroes, like not Malicious, not D-Draw, like Dreadmaster and like Clock Tower Prison. And like I'm pretty sure at one point I had Destiny Hero Defender and Greed in my deck, which Greed is a continuous trap card that says if your opponent draws outside of their draw phase, they get burned for 500. Like that was my combo. Like that was in my deck when I was in like 5th grade. Like I thought that was good. So then a couple of my friends like stopped playing, and then I had like there were like a lot of personal issues in my life. I'm not going to go into it because it's very personal, but I stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh for a couple years. I was like really depressed and like whatever. And then after a certain point, I think it was like maybe synchros were just coming out is when I like stopped playing. Like I played all like the new I played like Crystal Beast and all like the bad anime decks, and then synchros came out, and I like stopped playing for a little bit. And then I think I came back into the game when I was like in a better place, like personally. around D-Rev, Duelist Revolution, because I remember pulling Effect Veiler from the D-Rev sneak peek, which I then traded for a Super Rescue Cat, and the Super Rescue Cat got banned the next week. So good job, me. Then I played. I didn't really see the appeal of. I don't know why, but I didn't really see the appeal of the new Yu-Gi-Oh. Like I stopped playing right when Synchros came out for reasons unrelated to Yu-Gi-Oh. Then when I tried to come back in, like it was so expensive to come back in. Like I was still bad. Like I don't even think I knew what a YCS was, or even what like an SJC was, which like like I don't think I knew like what a competitive, like what it actually meant to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just like even if you're bad, like you can read Solemn Warning and be like, wow, this card's good, but it's like $55. Like I can't buy 3 of those. So I didn't really get back into it because it was just so expensive. So then I stopped playing again, and then I think around Order of Chaos is when I made my like return to Yu-Gi-Oh, and I haven't really left since then.
What year would
that
that
was
be
right when that was 2012.
Okay.
And one of the big reasons for that was a friend of mine said something like he like discovered DN, and he was like, and he kind of like nervously like brought to my attention like, hey, do you know about Yu-Gi-Oh? And I was like, yeah. so then he got me into DN. Which was the first time that I was able to really, have like all the cards in front of me and like just have all like have all the information. Like I was older, so I knew how to use like the internet and like look up top deck lists, and then try to learn about like meta trends and whatever. And this was also around the time I believe both Pot of Duality and Solemn Warning got reprints in the tins in whatever tins were from that year, which was like crazy. So I could actually get a lot of the expensive cards that I needed to build a deck. So this was right when I think it was like Insector Rabbit Windup. So me being the exceptional human I was, I played Heroes because that, not like Flame Wingman Heroes, but I was like, I used to play Heroes, so I played like Hero Beat or like Bubble Beat with with like Stratos, and it was like you only play like 7 monsters. It was like Stratos, 3 Alias, 3 Bubble Man, like, and then it was like Rhoda, E-Calls, and you just made Rank Force Miracle Fusion, and then it had like a good rabbit matchup or something. I still don't know why I had a good rabbit match. I know it did, but I cannot explain to you why because I was bad. So then I played Heroes during that format. So that was probably the first deck, and Heroes were like somewhat meta. Like they weren't great, but they were like tier 2 maybe. Like it had a good rabbit matchup. It lost to Chaos Dragons really badly. Yeah, Gemini Spark, Hero Blast, those cards. So then when I stopped playing Heroes, like I played Heroes for way too long. I think I stopped playing Heroes when Fire Fist came out, because I remember playing Heroes against Mermail and losing a lot. So when Fire Fist came out, something about them like made me want to play it, and I was lucky enough to get bears like really early before they went up. And because Nikki Reardon was the first U.S. player, I believe, to top with Fire Fist, he made top 8 at YCS Miami, who I did not know him at the time, but now like he lives less than an hour away from me and is one of my closest friends. So that was weird. I started playing Fire Fist. I got my first invite to Nats at a regional with Fire Fist at like X2, or X3. I was really bad. Anyway, then Tachyon came out, which Tachyon was the set, Lord Tachyon Galaxy. It had the Dragon Rulers and had Spellbook of Judgment. And for whatever reason, I actually got Spellbook of Judgments. Like I pulled like 1 or 2 Spellbook of Judgments like randomly, and I was like, guess I'm playing Spellbooks. So I made a Spellbook deck. I actually went to Nats. Like 2013 Nationals was the first premier event I ever played. And I just played like Judgment Spellbooks. It was like a pretty standard deck. Like I think I actually had most of the cards like for the first time.
And you'd been practicing on DN a little bit by this point, right? So I'm assuming you've been grinding
I
that
had
quite a lot.
Yes. I played spellbooks on DN a lot. Like that was I actually found the spellbook mirror to be a lot of fun, and I actually think like I was good at the spellbook mirror. Like if I were to rate my like skill level at that time, I was like really bad, but I was a lot better at the spellbook mirror than like my skill level should have allowed me to be, to the point where like if like I thought like I legitimately thought, and this still might be true, if I had been lucky enough to play literally 12 spellbook mirrors at 2013 nationals, I may have had the most undeserved nationals top of all time. Unfortunately, I played a lot of dragons and lost because I was bad.
Well, I can think
So
of a lot more undeserved tops than that, to be honest.
yeah, sure, but like I just played against dragons and then just like lost like a lot. So at this point, what happened next? Ravine Dragons was the next, like the list came out, then Ravine Dragons happened, and I played that deck. But and it seems we seem to be hitting a trend here of me playing like good decks. Like, don't worry, that will not last long. So I played like Ravine Dragons. I didn't even own 3 Dragon Ravines. I only owned 2.
Did you play Terraforming
And I
instead?
didn't. No,
Oh, damn.
I was bad. I was really bad. So I just like played Ravine Dragons at locals for that format. Like I didn't even go to any events. I don't even think I went to a regional. Like I may have gone to one regional. Like I didn't like know about like the competitive scene. Like I had no like drive to go to actual events. So then Shadow Specters came out, and this is where I call them the Dark Ages for me. Noble Knight Boars came out, which made Noble Knights like
Playable.
I'm not even gonna say playable. I'm going, however, it made them a deck. So I hope no one watching this now or on YouTube or ever knows what I'm about to talk about. But I had a YouTube channel. It still exists. I still put like, or well, I guess I don't anymore. I put like deck profiles from like when I topped YCS Toronto 2 months ago. I put like my deck profile on my old channel. It has like a couple hundred subscribers because apparently some people wanted to know. I made Noble Knight tutorial videos for like a year. I just like whenever a new Noble Knight card came out, I just like made a video about it. They're not up anymore, so you can't watch them, thankfully.
Oh, fuck, I just tried to search for it.
Yeah.
Is it Yugi Ghost Trick?
No, I think the YouTube channel is like the Button Masher, and it still has some of my old like deck profiles on it. I don't think it has any more like Noble Knight stuff on it. But I did that for a little while, and that was actually a lot of fun. But so I just like played Noble Knights for like 2 years, like when Boars came out until like new challengers. Even after that, like when the Noble Knight box released, like Virgil and Scout were legal, and I played Noble Knights for like 2 weeks. I thought I could make something happen. Okay, so 2013, like end of 2013, early 2014, I was playing Noble Knights because I was bad. Then I met Calvin Tahan, who is now probably one of my, if not my closest friend. And when I think it was, I went to ARG Atlantic City 2014 with him. He had like an extra spot in his car. Like he lived near me. He went to my locals. And I was like, yeah, I'll go. I played like some bad like Shadal deck or something. And then watching Calvin play, like I was out pretty early. I was out by like round like 5 or 6 or whatever. And he made top 8. So I watched a lot of his matches, and watching Calvin play like made something click for me, where I realized like what it meant to actually like care about being good and like get better. And that like started something where I wanted to get better. He was playing Burning Abyss. That was like the first week it was out, where it was just Grafseer, Skarm, Dante. Nobody played Traveler, and it played like Chaos Sorcerer, BLS, Wing Blast, Karma Cut, like Caius. Like that was the deck. It was literally just Monarchs with like Chaos monsters. So the next 2 weeks later, we went to Philly Regional, which the Philly Regionals, I believe, they're like the biggest regionals on the East Coast for the US. They get around 600 people, like between 500 and 600 people. And we played, or I played BA. I played like Ryza BA. The deck was literally like Ryza, your opponent's like Winda or like Artifact monsters, because Artifact Shadalls were like the most popular deck. The deck was literally just Ryza and Wing Blast, your opponent's Artifact monsters, and then just win. And I got second at like a 600 person regional, and I was like bad. And so that was my first like regional top. That was my first time like entering a tournament like outside of my local area and like doing well ever. So that gave me like a false sense of like skill. Like I thought I was better than I actually was by like, and I thought I was a lot better than I actually was. Like I was still really bad.
You didn't have like any regionals and stuff you attended before that, like?
I'd attended them. I just like didn't do well. I've been to a couple regionals like back in like when I played like like Elemental Hero like Flame Wingman deck. I think I entered like one regional then and went like 4 and 5 or something. It was really bad. And then in 2012 when I was playing like Heroes, like a Hero Beat, I went like at X3. Like I didn't top. Like I didn't even get my invite. And then with Fire Fist, like I got my invite once, but it still wasn't good. So this was the first time I actually like top 8 at a regional, and did like pretty well. And then unfortunately, the Noble Knight box set came out, and I went to the new challengers came out first, and then the Noble Knight box set came out, and I still to this day will say I had the best Noble Knight list in the world. However,
maybe the only Noble Knight list in the world.
For YCS Anaheim, I had the best Noble Knight list. However, I think my Medrot got warning 3 times, and then I like O2 dropped, and it was really bad. So then I was out by like literally. I think I like 1-2 drop. Like I was out by like round 3 or round 4 because the deck was just that awful. And then I just played side events. Like I played Battle Pack Draft, and like structured deck tournaments, and then since I was out so early, I got to play like all. So like I don't know how so. For YCSs, when you enter side events, you get like points. And then if you win side events, you get more points. So like entering one gives you 2 points, winning one gives you an extra 2 points. So I won like 2 or 3 side events day one. So I had I had like 8 points. I think I only won 2. Yeah. So I had like 8 points. And then day 2, when we came back, Calvin convinced me to just make like a BA deck. Like we basically just played like the list, or I basically just played something very similar to the list that Hoban won ARG Charlotte with. This was a little bit after ARG Charlotte, so I literally just like played a list that was very similar to that. It was just like Fire Lake, Virgil, like BA, big BA, and then I won like a regional side event. And then I actually had enough points because I was out so early and just won all the side events. I had enough points to play in the prize card playoff.
Nice.
So at YCS Anaheim, after O2 dropping with Noble Knights, I won the side event, like the public card playoff, and got a Sky Dragon. So
that was shame. Really it was weird. A really shit side card. Though.
Yes, it is. It is a shame. It was probably like I think the only worse prize card was like Blood Mephist, because that Blood Mephist, the only reason that one was so cheap is that one they used that one for like 2 years or like 3 years. They used that one for way too long. Like that card is like dirt. And the mat is like so cheap. Anyway, so then after that, I decided that like Noble Knights were done. I was done playing like bad. I was done playing bad decks. Like I wanted to experience the success I had with BA at like Philly and there like more. I decided that what I actually wanted to do is I actually wanted to like win in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like as crazy as that sounds, it took me like 2 years to realize that winning was something that I wanted to do. So I played BA at ARG Orlando 2015. It was like January 2nd, 2015. and then I played BA at YCS Charleston. And about this time, Calvin was still probably the only, like, I'm gonna say, like, mentor figure. He was the only one I really like discussed theory with. But right after Charleston, I started talking to Nikki Reardon and Colin Reardon a lot, and became friends with them. So between, I have to credit literally Calvin, Nikki, and Colin for like bringing me out of the abyss of like bad Yu-Gi-Oh, and like dragging me like into the competitive scene, and like teaching me like what I was supposed to do, really. So
Just before you go into
Nekros
that,
came
there's
out.
actually
Yep.
a kind of really cool question someone just asked.
Mhm.
Is it because you're the like Arthurian legend that you like Noble Knights, or
Oh,
was it like the playstyle, or
it was actually both. Like I really liked like the flavor of the deck. I thought the artwork. I think I saw like Noble Knights have like the best artwork of any card. I think the Noble Knight Synchro Monster has probably the best artwork of, or it is my favorite artwork of any card in Yu-Gi-Oh. But I think it was a little bit of both. Like I enjoyed like the lore, and I thought they were fun to play. It was it was a shame they ended up being so bad. Like they never really got anything. I think if Merlin came out like 6 months earlier, I think the deck could have been like okay. Like I think if Merlin came out for YCS Philly, which was like Primal Origin, then I think that deck could have been like viable for like that event only. But like they didn't release Merlin, which wasn't even that good. Merlin was just like another, like, it was like a Lone Fire Blossom, but like that's okay, whatever. It was like a consistency card. But they released it like after they released Virgil, Construct, and Scout. Like the game got power creeped so hard, and then they just gave them like a mediocre card. But anyway,
yeah.
They just waited way too long, and the cards like weren't good by the time they came out. So Nekros came out, and I think Nekros was, I believe, like the turning point for me in Yu-Gi-Oh. Something about it really clicked. I loved that deck. I just loved everything about it. And then Nikki was very good at Nekros. Something about it just clicked with him too. So and he was a lot better than me at this point. Like he already had a YCS. So it's Miami, I mentioned earlier. So I don't live too far away from Colin or Nikki. I live maybe like 30, 40 minutes away. So at least like 3 times a week, I would actually just like drive to their house, and we would just like play Nekros mirrors. Like I didn't have the whole deck yet. I was borrowing it from a friend who couldn't go to the next event, which was ARG Richmond. And I got my first like event top, whatever, at ARG Richmond with a borrowed Nekros deck, and because of that, I won enough store credit to finish buying my own Nekros deck. So had I not topped that event, I probably would not have had a Nekros deck, and I would have not played Yu-Gi-Oh! Like maybe not just played Yu-Gi-Oh! At all, because I wouldn't have had the deck, because Valks were still like 40, 50. Like Brio's went down because Brio just got hit to 2. Because they hit Brio in prep like right away. There was maybe a month, maybe less than a month, where you could play 3 prep and 3 Brio. So I finished my Nekros deck, and then the next event I played, I judged YCS Columbus. I judged a lot of regionals as well. Like throughout this sprinkled in, I judged a few regionals. I like judging. Like I like the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh. I still judge occasionally. I don't judge YCS anymore. I only judge regionals, but I judge YCS Columbus for some reason. And so the next event I actually played with Nekros was Nationals, and the aspect of my game that I think I've improved the most, but at the same time is still not very good, is when I take my first loss at an event, I tilt like hard. And it used to be that when I took my first loss from the event, I wasn't added on DN a couple times for the comment. Anyway, someone asked in the comments in the chat.
Yeah.
I tilted. I used to tilt really hard. I still tilt like a lot, but where if I would take my first loss, I wouldn't like straight drop from the event, but like I would not win another match. Like that was how hard I would tilt. Like you usually. The one exception was I think ARG Richmond, which I lost round 1. I got crush carded for 5. Game 3, turn 1, my opponent T-sets. I draw. He crush cards me for 5 of my 6 cards in my hand. And I almost dropped the event. And then a friend of mine convinced me to keep playing. And then I won out from there. But at Nats, I lost round 4. My opponent goes like Dante set 1. My hand is insane. My hand is like Manju, Kaleido, Unicorn, Brio, like MST to his 1 back row. And then I drew like Klosalis for turn. I was like, this is crazy. Then I was like, MST your back row. He goes, chains Mind Crush, calls Manju, and I lose. Because I couldn't make a dwell. I was so tilted. I was like, what? I was like if I just had Senju in my hand, like I won. I couldn't believe what was what had just occurred. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, oh my god, like I literally had game that turn with like Dweller Brio trade, like it was game, and then it's like Manju, I'm like, oh, so then I lost, then I lose the next round because I'm like tilted so hard, and then I lose the next round after that because I'm tilted so hard. So I just like scrubbed Nats like horribly. Colin and Nikki both topped and played each other in top 64. That was weird. So 2 brothers played each other in top 64 of 2015 Nats. So then I was really like upset about that, and I was like, man, maybe I could have topped if I had just like like not tilted, or if I had just like played through that or something. I was like mad because like I wasn't sure if it was my like fault, quote unquote fault, I lost. But like it was like, even though I lost that match, like I still probably could have like kept playing and like maybe still top anyway. Like 1 match doesn't matter. You can go like X3, at Nats and still top. So I was very like, I just wanted to get right back into it, and like I wanted to keep playing more because I felt like I could do it if I just like play another event. So the ARG 25K was the next event I played, and they had their own ARG format. So they banned Trishula, Nekros of Trishula, and they limited Unicorn, but they soon like changed that where they put Unicorn back at 3, then they limited Shurit. So it was Shurit limited, Trish banned, and then everything else was basically the same. Like BA had like 2 Dante, and like I think Shadal's had like 1 El Shadal fusion or something. So I made top 32. I made top 16 at the 25K, and then played against Nikki in top 16 of the ARD 25K. So I won game 1, and then just cleanly lost games 2 and 3, like because he was just better than me at that point at Nekros. So I wasn't really upset about that. I felt like I just literally lost to the person who like taught me how to play the deck, and like I was okay with that. Then YCS Toronto 2015. I went with Calvin. We flew, and I got my first YCS top. I played against Ritual Beasts on the bubble, and Ritual Beasts is a deck that I lost to constantly. Like I don't know if anybody's ever played the Ritual Beast like Nekros matchup. From the Nekros perspective, like for some reason, I'm not really sure why. Like just like the way Ritual Beasts work, like Nekros doesn't actually have that many favorable interactions against them. Like Brio and Unicorn don't really do much because they just tag out, and like with their fusions, it doesn't really matter. So you're not really left with a whole lot of Nekros cards that actually like affect the board. You're left with only really Trishula, and they have a lot of trap cards to stop that from happening. So I played Ritual Beast on the bubble, and I was literally no way I can possibly win this like at all. And then my opponent like kind of like threw like he let me summon an Exciton. Like I had like 2 Manjus, and he let me summon an Exciton when he had like a Steed set, and then I just Excitoned him for like his whole life, and then I just won like randomly. Like I was not supposed to win that match. I was supposed to lose. Like, and I just couldn't believe it how it just walked. I was like, okay, like I had like a Manju on the field, and then I drew another Manju for turn, and I'm like, well, I was like, summon Manju. I was like effect, is that fine? And he's like, yes, it's fine. I was just like got like Klosalis, and I was like, I activate Klosalis. Then I added like Kaleidoscope. And I'm like, adding Kaleidoscope, is that fine? And he's thinking, he's like, yes. I guess he thought I was going to activate Kaleidoscope immediately. And instead I just like put Kaleido back in my hand and just made Exciton. And then hit it, and then hit his back row of like 2 steeds, like an ambush, and then his like all his monsters. So then I lost in top 16 of YCS Toronto to Satellar Knight. He was the only Satellar Knight in top cut, I believe, and he made a giant hand, which this was still when giant hand was like a prize card, and it was he hit an ultra giant hand actually, so that was like probably like $1,000 or more. And it made me so mad because if I just drew Kaleido into Unicorn, I literally won. And I think I had a Unicorn, and if I drew a Closalis or a Kaleido, I literally won. And then I drew Manju instead, so Giant Hand just negated my Manju, and then I lost. And I was so mad that was like how I lost. So then the next event, right after Toronto, I think this is the only like personal details that I'm going to mention because I think it actually like mattered a lot to like what I did next. Was my girlfriend broke up with me a little after Toronto, and I was very like depressed. So instead of like previously, as I mentioned, right in like 2012 when or 2010 or whatever, when I was depressed, I got very like introverted and like didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh. Instead, I decided that Yu-Gi-Oh was how I wanted to like escape from reality, and I started playing as much as I possibly could, like even if it wasn't like a convenient way. So there was like an OTS, which is like it's an OTS championship, which is like a tournament at a locals where the winner, like first place, gets the regional top 8 mat, and like top 4 get invites. And like I already had my invite. I didn't need the mat. Like it didn't matter. I just wanted to play Yu-Gi-Oh. It was like an hour away. I convinced a couple of my friends to go, like Holonicki and Calvin. We all went, and then for whatever reason, like my extra deck was short a card. Norden had just come out, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play Valor to Valor People's Masquerades, because that was like what people were playing. They're playing either Clowns, they're playing Instant Fusion with Norden to make like Masquerade to kill you through Valk. I was like, I'm gonna Valor People's Masquerades, and I'm gonna Norden back my Valor and make Trishula, like the Synchro Trishula. Like that was my deck. I was like, I'm gonna make Synchro Trishula and Nekros Trishula. And I played maybe like 6 rounds because it wasn't a very big tournament, and I summoned Synchro Trish like 7 times. It was crazy. I double Trished everyone. It was sick, and I was like, wow, this is broken. So then, like, because of that experience, like, I actually got so much practice playing like the Nekros mirror, like with Masquerade in the equation, that I was going to YCS Dallas the next weekend with Calvin and Nikki. So we went to Dallas, and I don't know what deck Calvin played. I feel like he played BA, but Nikki and I played a card for card same Nekros list, where we mained 2 Maxi and 3 Valor, because you wanted to have hand traps to stop. Like Maxi was crazy against Instant Fusion, because unlike in most decks, where you can Instant Fusion as like your last thing per turn, just like as like an extra, like summon, higher ceiling or something like that, whatever. For Nekros, because of Unicorn's effect, you pretty much had to Instant Fusion first, because if you tried to Instant Fusion when Unicorn was already on the field, you wouldn't get to summon with Norden. So you couldn't Kaleido to bait out a Maxi, and then instant. So you couldn't like Kaleido to check for Maxi and then Instant Fusion later. You had to Instant Fusion first if you were going to use it that turn pretty much at all. So Maxi was crazy. And then Valor, when they went for Masquerade plays, it was usually pretty all in, where if they didn't, like, they committed everything to the board and they would kill you. So if you just Valored Masquerade, they usually wouldn't have an out to your Trish next turn. And then if you Trished away their Masquerade, they didn't really have a way to kill you through Valk anymore. So we thought those hand traps were like crazy. I thought the synergy with like making Synchro Trish was absurd, because I was dumb, sort of. And I topped YCS Dallas, and then In Swiss, I made Synchro Trish a few times. One time, I actually Kaleidoed to send Synchro Trish from my extra deck to ritual summon Nekros of Cataster and Nekros of Unicorn. And my opponent was mad. We played Cataster because it was a searchable way to summon another level 4 from your graveyard. Like you can discard Cataster to summon Great Sorcerer. And then there was a combo. If you had like a Manju, Kaleido for Unicorn, Instant Fusion, and then a way to summon back something with and a way to get a Cataster, you could actually make a board of like Valk, Carnagorgon, Masquerade, which was like 8,050 or something. And the only way for them to stop that was they had to have 3 Veilers. So if you made Carnagorgon, Masquerade, Valk, they had to Veiler. And they had to have a 3rd Veiler for the Masquerade after Carnagorgon activated twice. Carnagorgon was also insane because a lot of people would actually leave things up in the mirror when they had Veiler, and you could summon Carnagorgon and then summon like Nekros of Trishula, and then they couldn't Veiler your Trish, and that was also gain a lot of points. So just like extra level 4s were like crazy. So in my top 8 feature of Dallas, well, actually, I'm gonna slow down a little bit. Top 32, I played a mirror and won. Nikki lost in top 32, and then I played the person Nikki lost to in top 16. So had Nikki won, I would have played him in top 16 again, which is crazy. That like somehow I would have played Nikki in top 16 of like 2 events in a row. So I won in top 16. In top 8, in my feature, which is you can look at for if you want, I actually resolved double Trishula. Like I had Nekros with Trish and Synchro Trish, and it was a little absurd. So yeah, I won game 1 because I opened Emptiness because that card was absurd. I only opened Emptiness, I think 3 times, or I only drew Emptiness 3 times at Dallas, but I won every game I drew it, like which is like expected. So unfortunately, I guess it happened to be in top 8. So game 1 I won with Emptiness. Game 2 I resolved 3 Trishulas. Like I Nekros Trished him, then like Valked it away, then next turn Synchro Trished and Nekros Trished. So it was like my hand was like crazy. Then I lost in top 4 to Eric Christensen, who was playing Infernoid, ripped me. That feature is really unfortunate. My hand was like so bad in game 1 that I had to summon a Decisive Armor by instant fusioning for Norden and bringing back Max C, so I could tribute Valk and Max C to summon Decisive Armor. And so I lost that match, and that was really unfortunate. Like I was so upset. Actually, like at the time, I wasn't actually like that upset because like that was the first time I'd gotten that. My top 8 opponent at Dallas was Jonathan Gomez, who is a very good Nekros player. He I believe he top 8'd all 3 YCSs that were like after Nats before Shurik got banned, which were like Toronto, Dallas, and San Jose. So I lost to Eric in top 4. And then it was like the first time I got into that far of the tournament, so I wasn't like too upset about it. Because like I didn't have an expectation to win the event like at all. I think that would have been a little bit like unrealistic for me to expect that at that point. And then top 4, I played against Ed Asception. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm sorry I butchered that. And I won. It was a very long game, and I think game 1 and 2 of that match were very unfortunate. Like game 1, he goes first, like flip Skull Drain, I lose. Game 2, I go first, flip Decree, he loses. And then game 3 was one of the longest like Nekros BA games I've ever played in my life. Like I used all 6 spells and like all 3 Unicorns. And he used like all of his Dantes and all of his Seers, and he was like he was at like 0 cards, like floating 1 Dante into 1 Seer, and I just had like a Decisive Armor and like no more ways to ritual summon, and eventually like got there because he couldn't set Seer, else it just got banished. So Decisive Armor just kept like chipping away at his Seer. And then after Dallas, Nikki and I we were wearing like shirts from our like local store. We were like sort of sponsored by them, but like not really.
Just as you go to the next event, I just want to remind you that I try to keep this under an hour, and
Sure.
I do want to move on to technical play and deck building at some point.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Sure. I'm just talking about Atlantic City, and then I'll probably just like stop there.
Sure.
So we each got like a box of high speed riders for like used for like wearing the store's like shirts to like play at an event. So I pulled all the Cyframe cards, and I was like, and then he didn't want his box, so I got it from him, and I just like had a Cyframe deck, and I was like, you know what, like I got lucky at Dallas. Like realistically, like that'll probably be the furthest I ever go in Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm not gonna play Nekros at the next ARG. Like I just want to play a fun deck. Like I was so kind of upset about my whole like like girlfriend like not being there anymore like issue. So so I just wanted to like play for fun. I went to for like a week or so. I was just playing like random like Cyframe builds. I played with Nishad Lorengo, who is maybe better known as Squids on DN. He was like number one on DN for a while. And then
Wait, that's Squiddy?
not Squiddy. There's this is a very common misconception. Squiddy is a Yu-Gi-Oh player who's like very well known for his like online persona. There's someone else whose name is Squids, who gets constantly asked if he is Squiddy. However, like I don't know.
Okay.
But he was just like number one on DN for a while, and he was just a friend of mine. He again like lived like less than an hour away from me, so we talked a lot. And the only testing I did with Cyframes before Atlantic City was against his hero deck, because this was ARG format. So like Stratos was legal, like Nekros was like butchered, like Trish was banned, Unicorn was at 1, Shirt was at 1. Like I didn't think Nekros was that good. I didn't want to. I didn't want to play like. I didn't want to play like a butchered version of Nekros. So I was like, you know what? I talked to Colin. Colin has been responsible for building most of the decks I've played for most events, the past like year and a half. So he was trying to convince me, like, you just got to play the best deck. And I was like, Colin, like this event, I understand. And I thank you for everything that you've done, like convincing me to play like, good like year. I just want to play a fun deck. I think this deck is really cool. Like I'm playing with it a lot, or not a lot, but I'm playing with it on the DN. It's really fun. So we built Cyframe Yosenjus literally on the car ride up to the event. We were driving to the event. My only experience with the deck had been I sleeved it when we pulled all the Cyframe cards at locals, played one match against him, beat his Nekros deck because lose one turn was broken. And then that was the end. And then I played it against Nishad's hero deck for like an hour on DN. So on the way to the event, we built the deck. Like I pulled up a notepad and he was driving and he was like, okay, tell me what all the cards do. And we were just talking and we just built the Cyframe deck. And then I didn't even have the cards yet. Like I had to buy an Omega. I'd have Mike Albanese buy me an Omega at the event because Peter Chang bought them out from the vendors and Peter wouldn't sell one to me. so like that was how real the struggle was. So then round 1, I played against Heroes, which is the only deck I'd play tested against. So I got to spend the round learning how to play my deck, not trying to learn the matchup between his deck and my deck. So I won that. I got a draw against the Teller Knight against Nizar in round 2, and that was actually a feature match. So you can read that, or you can like watch that, I guess, like if anyone's curious later. It was literally just like him reading the Teller Knight cards, like me getting Mind Crushed like game 1 and losing game 1, and then me not getting a Mind Crush game 2 and like winning game 2. Like it was really, and then we drew.
Is Nizar that guy who's like famous for that grudge match on YouTube?
Probably. I know he's a very well-known player, but I don't remember what he's known for.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately. So then round 3, I played against Colin, and he was playing Nekros. And this was the most one-sided game, like in this format, in like ARG format for that specific event. My deck destroyed Nekros. So after a draw in round 2, I was like, man, I won round 1. I already got a draw in round 2. Like this deck is a joke. Like this deck sucks. I played Colin and I won, and I felt so bad because I felt like I just ended his tournament. I felt like I just ended a friend's tournament, and I felt like I had no chance of topping. So I was like, okay, well, whatever. I just felt bad. And then like I just didn't lose again. It's like I just kept winning in Swiss. Like I played against um like two Infernoids, like Nekros again, Cosmo. I played a PSY-Frame mirror. That was weird. That was really weird. I played a PSY-Frame mirror around like 7 of Swiss. That was so bizarre. But he didn't play the Yosenjus, so he didn't really have a win condition against my deck. Like, he didn't have a way to like actually like win if I didn't do anything. So I was just like summoning Yosenjus and just killing him. But that was a very bizarre match. So then day 2, I think my top cut like matchups from Atlantic City were like crazy. Like I played like the literal gauntlet. I played Nick Ma, who won like the Players Championship the previous year with Nekros, or that year actually. He was the defending Players Championship actually, or the defending Players Champion actually. Then I played Mike Albanese in top 8. Then I played Matthew Monahan in top 4. And Matthew Monahan, my top 4 match against Matthew Monahan, he was the only other one in top 16 that was playing like a weird deck. He was playing like Ignite Hero Jinzo. And Jinzo, he mained 3 Jinzos.
Yep.
So
I remember that.
He played Ignites, like Shadow Mist Stratos, like Jinzos. And I won like somehow. And then in the finals, I played against Shadal's and won that. Like again, somehow. Like not really sure. And it was just insane that I like accidentally won the event with like the deck we built in the car.
Do you think that was a good deck, or do you think you just kind of like
for that event? That deck was insane. I lost 2 games.
Oh wow!
Like 2 games of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like there were like 8 rounds Swiss and 4 rounds. I lost 2 games. That deck was crazy. ARG format made most other decks like so much worse that like that deck was just randomly crazy, like broken. Like that deck, I don't think that deck will ever be good again. But for that specific event, I actually think that was the best deck, which is like weird. So then like after that, like I didn't really do too well at events for a while. I topped like a regional with like Pendulum with like Plushfire, and then topped I got top 32 at YCS with like Monarchs, and then bricked really badly. Topped an ARG with Monarchs and bricked really badly in top 16. Like I was just really bad. YCS Toronto. I got 3rd with Monarchs, and I lost to Bowden this time. I actually beat Bowden in Swiss, and then lost to him in top 4. So that was kind of unfortunate. But I think that basically brings me to like the interesting, like nothing really too interesting happened after Atlantic City, like until now. Like it's been pretty standard. Like Toronto was cool and all, but like I wish I'd won Toronto. Obviously, I'm trying to go to YCS Sydney in January. Maybe give Bowden a little payback and win a YCS on his turf.
That'd be pretty cool.
But so I think that's basically the end of the history of me. So
all right, that's awesome. So for this part, I'd like to talk more about actual mechanics and understanding of the game itself. Now, one thing that I noticed was actually kind of interesting, and thinking about it now after like the 16 or so people or whoever that I've had here, I actually can't think of anyone who just came out and said like, at this point I was pretty terrible, apart from obviously the Kaiba Yugi structure deck stage. Not a lot of people came out and just said like, I was bad, or I had a false sense of grandeur about me because I happened to do well at some regional. I think it's really interesting that you recognize that you obviously had a lot of room for improvement at some point in your playing career. At what point do you think that sort of faded and you kind of realized, hey, I need to improve? And furthermore, what was it about your understanding of the fact that you weren't that good? What did you learn from that? Like what were some important key aspects that you think that you were doing wrong at the time, or things that you realize were just wrong, and like you just needed to like reevaluate the way you considered and thought about Yu-Gi-Oh? If that makes sense.
Yes. So I think the biggest the biggest thing probably wasn't necessarily like technical play. Like it's really hard to improve improve technical play without just like playing a lot, or just like watching a lot of games. Like that's something that's like it's really hard to like theory technical play. The aspects that I think was lacking, and still probably am lacking like the most, was my deck building was atrocious. My deck building still isn't like that good. Colin and Nikki built a lot of the decks I played, and I have to thank them a lot for that. Like if Colin didn't build like half the decks I played, I would have 1 or 0 tops probably. But I think the only deck that I've actually built that I'm like proud of is I built the deck that Calvin won ARG Richmond with. I built the Quantum deck. So that's the only deck that I've actually ever like that I can say like I actually like innovated. Like everything else was pretty much like Colin and Nikki would like show me a deck and they'd build most of it, and then maybe I'd help them tweak a few cards. But the theory of deck building and the theory of side deck building, mainly like side decking, is I think such an important aspect of the game that a lot of people don't think about. Because if you think about it, like I think the sort of like false pretense a lot of people like think about side decking is your main deck matters because every game one is your main deck. But if you really think about it, the minimum games of Yu-Gi-Oh you can play in a match are 2, and sometimes you play 3. That means you are minimum side decking. Like if you lose game 1, you are side decking game 2, and if you win game 2, you're side decking game 3. You are actually playing more games with your side deck than without your side deck. And I think that's something, just because the games that you play sided happen after the game you play without siding, I guess people like that doesn't like click. So knowing what, like having a side deck to prepare for the decks that you think you're going to play against, and knowing what you can afford to side out, like building your deck, like knowing what you can side out, like knowing how many cards you can take out without hurting your deck, is such an important skill that I'm still like working on. I think that's something that I don't think many people have actually, if anyone has actually like perfected. Like side decking is actually so hard. And it's crazy. And that was something that I never really like gave much thought. But and then the other thing that I think is when you think you're better than you are, you don't get better. If that makes any sense. Like
yeah, you just become very complacent.
Yes. And it's not even just that. It's like, people say, and this was a mindset that I think I had even in 2014 when I stopped playing Noble Knights, started playing like BA, when I said I want to get better. Something that Colin tells me a lot is that even if someone says they want to get better, like there's a difference between saying you want to get better and legitimately believing and wanting to get better. It's really easy to say I want to get better and then not put any work into it. It's a lot harder to say I want to get better, really think about what you're doing wrong, and then try to improve from that. And that's something that I still like, want to do more. Like, I think it's just really hard for people to contemplate like what their shortcomings are and like what they can improve on. And it's real, like, I think the hardest part is just like admitting actually that like you might not be as good as you think you are. And that's still something that I think I struggle with. And then I think like the final thing is that I would say, the mental game of Yu-Gi-Oh, of just like always being focused on the match, like losing a match and like staying focused, is also incredibly important. There's more to a tournament than actually playing the game. You have to concentrate. You have to be focused. You have to be confident. Like you have to, like, you can't lose a game and then think it's the end. And you can't lose a tournament and then or you can't like be eliminated from a tournament and then think like, that's the end of it. Like you'll never have another chance. Which is something that I'm still struggling with. Like I take losses really hard, and I know I shouldn't. And that's probably the aspect I'm trying to improve on, like right now. Like on the next tournament I go to, like that's what I'm gonna try to improve on, is like just the result of an individual game doesn't matter. Like the result of an individual tournament doesn't even really matter. You need to just focus on like putting that behind you and just going forward and getting better. And as you get better, you will eventually start seeing the success that you want, I guess.
Yeah. Exactly.
Even if you don't have it immediately, if you just keep going, then you'll hope, like, if you really want to get better and really start improving, then you will see that success.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. So, in terms of, I mean, you spoke mostly about their like deck building and stuff, which is obviously very important.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of technical play, I think that's probably one of the more harder things to perfect. At least for me, it has been.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you've like feel like that you were looking back? You know, when you look back now and think, hey, I was thinking this way incorrectly, and what are some things you've learned?
Okay, so that's interesting. So there something that it took me a long time to realize is that like certain people will be better at certain things at different times, just like naturally. Like Nikki was just naturally like better at technical play than most people I've met, than most Yu-Gi-Oh players. Like his technical play was just like from the get-go like incredibly good. And I think like Calvin's like mental game, like I've never really seen Calvin like tilt like that much, or at least not in like Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, like I've never tilt. Like if something like insane happens, he just kind of like takes it and then just moves on. And I did not get better by myself, and not many people, if anyone, can really say they got better exclusively because of their own effort. Like maybe they're like if they did, it is a lot harder. If like it's a little unfortunate. Like I think if you're the best player in your region, then you're probably going to have a harder time getting better. But for technical play, when I was learning Nekros, Nikki and I would play open-handed Nekros mirrors, and we would talk about both of our hands. We would talk about the plays you could make with these cards, and not only would you just point out plays, you would have to explain why you were doing it. We really like slowed the game down, like dissected it, and it was like, okay, so these cards let you do this. Why do we want that to happen? Like, what is our opponent doing that we want to stop? What do we actually want to accomplish? Like, why is this good? And I think like in a tournament setting, you obviously can't like slow it down quite that much, or you get slow play warnings and like lose. But when you're playing, like when you're practicing, really like slow the game down. Think about what you're actually doing and like why it matters. Like, why are you making this play? What does this play actually do for you? Like what will they do in response to this? And why do you want them to do that or not want them to do that? And you really have to consider like there are a lot more variables going on to playing a card than just like playing the card affects more than just that one card. Like it affects everything in the game.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, so it sounds like the playtesting thing is obviously a huge part of it, because that's something we've tried a lot as well. Just the open-handed thing, especially because you get to understand the real intricacies of the matchups a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So yeah, I think that's something that's definitely cool.
But on the flip side of that, one thing I will say is that I wholeheartedly believe having a better deck matters a lot more than having better technical play. Like I don't think it's close. Like I think like if I picked up a Yugi starter deck, it's like the 2000 2 Yugi starter deck, I would not beat the guy at my locals who 0-3 scrubs every week. And I would never beat him. Like it is not possible. I know that's a pretty extreme example, but like if I have a deck that is significantly better than my opponent's, like just what it does is just significantly more unfair. I don't necessarily have to be better than them to beat them. And I think that's something.
What do you think about the counter argument where, see, because for the longest time ever, and it was
Yeah.
mostly kind of true for like, you know, maybe like 2014 and stuff. If you had a super like, you know, huge edge in deck building and deck choice, for example, you know, you had the gap between something like Bujin and like Mythic Ruler Dragons, like the gap was
Yes.
tremendous, right? So sure, in that case,
Yes.
like deck building and deck choice is important, but in recent formats where the decks have been a lot more closer to one another, so Fire King, Cosmo, Monarchs, like they all kind of were equally represented in terms of top cut and stuff. The gap between building an exceptional deck and an average deck was so not it wasn't so small, but it's been I think probably as small as it's been in, you know, for the longest time that I can think of. So when that
Yeah.
happens, do you not think that technical play starts to overshadow deck building?
Oh, I mean, like technical play definitely matters. Like, like I'm not saying that like technical play like doesn't matter, but like even in mirror matches, I think a lot of times like deck building can actually matter more than the technical play. I think one of the exceptions I can really say is that I think the Nekros mirror deck building was pretty solved for the most part. Not like, you know, not like an exact 40 card list, but it was like two people entering a YCS with a Nekros deck. I'm gonna say minimum 30, maybe even like 35 cards. Same. And Nekros, just like how it worked, you know, where like everything searched everything, and like you had access to almost your entire deck list, like at any point in time. I think that was a matchup where it was very like based on technical play. I'm also gonna even argue maybe like Shadal's were the same way, where like you just had, you know, like a Shadal mirror, like when you both, as long as you see like one like fusion spell, you have access to most cards in your deck at any point in time. Like BA with, you know, like with like Beatrice, probably like you have, you know, technical play matters a lot when you both have access to like your whole deck list like at all times. But I do think that for the most part, like being like having your deck better matters more than your technical play being better, because I feel like there's a ceiling to technical play. Like, if that makes sense, like you won't always be able to play out of a situation, you know, like we're not playing a fighting game, you know. Technical play is not like, there is some luck involved. Not saying that, like, I'm not saying that it takes no skill, and I'm like, obviously it takes skill, but I mean, like, when your deck is better, you don't have to get as lucky, and you don't necessarily have to play as well. Like, when the decks are closer in power, then, and the gap is smaller, then like you know, Monarch versus like BA, you know, the power levels were pretty similar. So if you played better, like maybe like if BA didn't draw anti-spell, I will say Monarchs were like a little bit better. So you had more room for error if you were playing Monarch in that matchup, is I guess how I'll put it. It's not necessarily that you don't have to play, like you don't have, I'm not saying that you can play worse, but like there's slightly more room to make mistakes. Like, I think if you're playing like the worst deck and you make a mistake, you usually just get blown out of the game. If you're playing the better deck and you make a mistake, there might be some room to recover. And I think that's where like deck building comes into it, where like if you're playing 16 in an event, you cannot expect like realistically for a human to play absolutely perfectly the entire event. Like, not a single mistake. That's like I'm sure it's happened, but to expect that from yourself every event is actually like crazy. And I think that you do actually have to play the better deck, because like realistically, you will probably make a mistake like somewhere. It might be a small one, but like you want to give yourself the best opportunity to win the event as possible.
I think that like it's not a question of, you know, playing perfect. I think it's a question of, I think that in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, like at the tournament level, like it's actually very rare that absolutely every single game, or even like most games, that you will play perfectly and optimally. I think for the most part, Yu-Gi-Oh is a battle between who makes the least mistakes.
Yes,
for the most part.
I that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I think that like for the like even the best and best duels, like in recent years we have more coverage of YCSs and live streams, and the number of misplays and stuff you see in like top 16, top 8, top 4, like really horrendous misplays, like kind of highlighted to me the fact that you know, watching these people play at the highest level, because you would expect, like, oh, if you're in top 4 YCS, you know, you're just playing like so well, but it's like both players are constantly throwing the game back and forth to one each other, like they're literally just punting games, like, you know. And it happens so often that it's made me realize that I think personally that if they were to perhaps just play optimally in that situation, the power level of their deck doesn't become irrelevant, of course, at all, but I think the gap closes to the point where if you just play better, it'll be fine. Because, and another reason why I think that is because if you look at, for example, recent formats, and it might just be completely jaded from something like Monarchs and Cosmo, but in order to quote unquote solve the format of like the past year, you needed a deck that didn't lose to a 3000 non-targetable monster, and you needed a deck that didn't lose to a non-targeted tribute and spin. So that was the two things completely separate from one another in different decks that you couldn't innovate around. So deck building just didn't have any of that aspect, you know, in that format, because there was just nothing, there was no role in that format. And one example I like to give is, for example, a player like, you know, Omar Daoudi. I don't really know if he plays much anymore, but he's, you know, definitely one of my favorite players. And that boy has like 10 tops or something, like, at least. And I think like 7 of them are like back to back and stuff. And he has never ever played a like innovative deck. He has always played the most bog standard, boring list. Like if you literally just go like Google like standard like Nekros list or something, he will. That's his.
I have
some
insight on him specifically. I actually roomed with him for YCS Providence.
Yeah.
Last year, and he made top 32 with a pretty standard like extra deck Monarch list. And it's interesting that like what he said was that's actually just like his philosophy of the game is he just plays a deck that is tried and true. He practices with it as much as he can. He never changes his deck like right before an event. He always just plays like what he's been practicing, and it's been very consistent. You know, he's topped a lot of events, but at the same time, like he's topped a lot of events, but I don't believe he's won an event.
No.
And I think that's like the difference is like I think to win an event, sometimes you have to play something like crazy.
Of course.
Like,
I mean,
that's not, you know, not always, but sometimes you have to just make a deck that's just better, and standard like won't always make it.
I would agree with that, but like if you're, you know, like an average Yu-Gi-Oh player, then that's all you are. You're just kind of average. And so the opportunity to win an event doesn't present itself as often as it would to top an event. So it boils down to the point of, would you rather win an event or would you rather have like 5 top 32s and 16s? For me personally, I think the 5 top 32s and 16s sounds a lot better than just being a one-trick pony.
I think the other issue is that like don't play standard and they put in their spicy tech. They just play bad cards. You know, they're like, you know, I think that's another issue is that it's only innovation if it works. And I think a lot of people, you know, they're like, I don't play standard, I play my own version, and they just like make the deck worse. And it's just like, why are you doing that to yourself? You know, I think if you legitimately can find a card that makes your deck better, then by all means, like put that card in your deck and like make your deck better and go win the event. But a lot of people, when they think about innovation, they just think about play some crazy off the wall deck, and then they just like lose because their deck is bad.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that's something that people have to realize is like you can't just like play an awful deck, call innovation, and then be like, I'm gonna win. Like that's just not how it works. Like your deck actually has to be good.
What are some awful techs that you've played over the years, apart from Greed?
In my deck, or that I've beaten because they were bad.
A little bit of both, actually, for some entertainment purposes.
All right, let me think of some bad cards I've played in my deck.
Apart from Greed.
Okay. Greed. Yeah, there you go. I mean, no, but like that's actually like a pretty perfect example. Like obviously extreme example, but like there are cards like that people play and that they think are like good, and they're just like not. Like I'm trying to think. I played at Nats, I played an extra deck Monarch Mirror, and my opponent was like was like Brilliant Fusion to send like Metaphys Arm Dragon and Lazuli, which Metaphys Arm Dragon, some people did play that over Jack's Knight or Dark Witch because it was a 2 tribute, but it had the correct Monarch stat, so you could reveal Tenacity with it. So if you drew Return, you'd rather have Jack's Knight. If you drew Tenacity, you'd rather have Metaphys Arm Dragon. And then he discards Metaphys Arm Dragon to summon Galaxy Soldier.
Oh wow!
And I was like, what? And then he was like, yeah, I think this is better than Quick Draw. I was like, how are those 2 cards even comparable? Like, what does that even? I was like, what does that even mean? Like, and then he was like, yeah, it's really good. Like, you discard your light monsters. I'm like, what? Like no, like I get what Galaxy Soldier does. I just don't get like how that helps the Monarch. Like, it was just baffling to me that like that was something that he put in his deck and like thought was like okay. I'm kind of drawing a blank on some other ones that like, I'm sure I've played some like really bad cards in my. I mean, just okay, like a regional. I top 8'd a regional in my home state last week, and like regional, it's different. Like for regional, your deck can be bad, and like sometimes you can just win because like the local players aren't as good as like premier events. But instead of siding Regeki, I sided a Farfa because I was playing Foolish in my ABC deck. And the logic we had was you have to hard draw Regeki to out a Monster Floodgate. You can hard draw Farfa or Foolish, and you can out a Monster Floodgate. Like, that's obviously bad, but we didn't care. And it was funny because I won a game with it, like, specifically because it was Farfa and not, like, Regeki. Like, I Farfa'd a Vanity's Fiend when he had 3 Metal Foe counters set and then just killed him because he couldn't activate any of his counters. Like, it doesn't make it good, like, I will never ever again. And I think when people play like tech cards like that and they see success with it one time, they get a very how's Colin put? Colin puts,
anecdotal
he's my
evidence.
theory teacher. He calls it like results-based thinking.
Yep.
Just because something happens once, or even like even a few times, does not mean that it's like correct to do. Like, and that's why play testing, like, it's good to like learn your deck, but you should never deck build by play testing, because in order to get like an accurate sample from play testing, you have to play like thousands and thousands of games, like maybe even hundreds of thousands, like so many more games than humans can actually like do, in a reasonable amount of time. Like, and if you just play, 10 games and then Mirror Force, and you Mirror Force someone for 5, like one time, that doesn't mean Mirror Force is good. Like, Mirror Force is still not, a correct call. And just because you're in a situation where you have a set Solemn Strike and your opponent has 5 monsters and they attack for game, that doesn't mean Mirror Force was better for your deck than Solemn Strike, because in that exact situation, it would have won you the game.
Yeah.
So I think and like, deck building is hard. And when people have like incorrect notions of deck building, it just makes it even harder.
Yep, that's a good ways to put it. I think I would agree with that. So as we draw near to the end of our discussion, if you guys in chat, quite a lot of you guys turned out actually today, that's pretty cool. But if you guys in chat can throw some questions out here, we'll do a Q&A, just really quick for like 10-15 minutes. In the meantime, I got a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. So first of all, sure. I mean, you mentioned Nekros format quite a lot, so is it safe to assume that that's like your signature deck of sorts? Is that the format I guess you saw, the most success? Or
yes, because even the Cypher deck was like in Nekros format actually. So yeah, Nekros format was I think I actually now have the same tops with Monarch and Nekros, or close to that.
Nice.
But if I had to choose, I would say like Nekros. Well, it's my favorite deck, and it's the deck that I've seen the most success with.
Okay.
Noble Knights are my favorite like bad deck, but that doesn't that's irrelevant.
So what do you think defines a good and healthy format, and conversely, what do you think defines a bad and unhealthy format?
Okay. I think a healthy format is generally when there's player interaction. I know that's very vague, but I think Nekros was a very good format. Not just because, like, obviously I like that format because I like did well, but I felt like Nekros was a deck where you had a lot of control over the outcome of the game, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you like in a Nekros mirror specifically, when you know, like, both when they're both so consistent and like it's such like a contained environment, where like the cards are so good that like there really weren't that many like techs that were like insane. Like it was, I think Nekros mirrors were one of the matchups where like technical play actually mattered maybe the most that it has in recent years. I think Emptiness should have been banned in that format. I actually do not like Nekros formats when Jin was legal. I think that is actually a pretty unhealthy format. So that's interesting. That like I think one of the better formats that we've had has been the Nekros format when Jin was banned, and I think one of the worst formats we've had recently was Nekros format when Jin was legal, because it turned mirrors, which when Jin is out of the equation, a lot of people, I'm not just me, like I think, you know, most people agree that like Nekros mirrors were generally pretty like skill based. Like obviously you can, you know, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Like somebody can brick, you know, like on the off chance, somebody can open insane on the off chance, but like the average Nekros mirror was generally like pretty skill based. With Jin, when you just Jin someone and like they didn't have the out for it, like you just took one of the most like skill based matchups in the game and made it an auto win coin flip like on turn 2 or turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think formats. I think the format we're about to have is not going to be very. I think formats that are designed around going first and setting up boards that are impossible to break are not healthy. I think one of the reasons why like Nekros format was so healthy and the reason that like BA formats previously were so healthy, like around New Challengers and Secret Attorney, was when you won the die roll, you chose to go second. You let your opponent play. Both players were always playing. That was something that I miss in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is winning the die roll and going second, like choosing to go second was like crazy. That we had so many formats of that,
Yeah.
because the decks were based around breaking your opponent's board and then like maybe killing them or just like setting up a board of your own. Yeah, I think those make generally the healthiest formats.
Yep. Okay, that's fair enough.
And okay, well, somebody asked, well, what does healthy mean to you? I think like enjoyable, fun, like, you know, nobody has fun. Even if you win, nobody has fun winning the die roll, summoning Dragon Tsukiyomi, setting 4 traps and flipping anti-spell and winning. Like, that's not fun. That's not fun for you. That's not fun for your opponent. Like, you know, no one's enjoying themselves. Like, you're not
Yeah.
playing. You know, in a Nekros mirror, when it goes, you know, like 10 turns and you're making plays every turn and both players are like interacting consistently every turn, that's fun. You know, usually, you know, in a Shadal mirror, you know, things like that are happening. Even in like Nekros versus Shadals, you know, when you're both like, you know, trading like ritual monsters into future, like when you're like trading resources throughout turns and there's like player interaction, I think that's healthy for the game, and I think that's like enjoyable. Like that's why we play Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, we don't play Yu-Gi-Oh to like, I could pick up my deck right now and just put a Dragon Buster on my field and set 4 back row. Like, you know, I don't need a person like in front of me to do that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Actually, if you don't need someone in front of you to do what your deck does, then chances are, you know, it's probably
Then your deck is not healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good way to look at it.
that's how I'd put it.
So this is actually a really interesting question and probably something you've thought about extensively by now. Desires is obviously a very important card, and it's something that's, you know, highly debated. What do you think are some correct numbers to play with Desires? So for example, a lot of people will go over 40 cards now. Some people even go over 40 cards with Upstart. At least, like, you know, last format Joshua Schmidt did, for example, because of Abductor, and it's a good target to banish off Desire. So all these kind of various arguments and stuff, if you just want to tell us your kind of general thoughts on the card itself.
I think with Abductor, that's a very good reason. Like if you're gonna if you have a specific example, I'm generally in the philosophy, mainly just because of like, I didn't know how to deck build, for the longest time. It wasn't really until I met Colin and Nikki that I really like fundamentals of deck building. And something that Colin is really big on, and generally like it's harder to build decks this way, but 40 cards upstart, like if your deck can support it, put in all the desires you can. Like I say, if your deck can support it, I can probably count on literally like in Yu-Gi-Oh that I wouldn't play desires in.
Such as?
So Nekros, Monarch, Nekros for sure, because if desires were legal in Nekros format, if you banish any of your ritual spells, or God forbid you banish 2 or 3 of your ritual spells, you lose. Like it's not even like you don't, in the decks now, in order for desires to make you like lose when you're playing ABC, you have to banish like all 3 of one of the pieces. If you banish 1 of your 6 ritual spells in Nekros, like, or your Trish, or your Shuret, like you lose, like instantly. I think in Monarch, Desires was legal for Toronto, and I did not play it because I think in the Monarch Mirror and in Monarch versus BA, the games usually go so long. Oh man, I did the math. I had a friend of mine help me with the math, the exact numbers, but we calculated the average number of Monarch spells and traps you would open in your opening hand, and then we calculated the average number you would banish if you opened with desires. And I think you on average open like 2 Monarch spells, like maybe 2 or 3. And then if you activate desires, you on average banish like 3 to 4, or like 2 to 3, or somewhere like 3.5, I think was like on average. So that is like 3 or 4 less times you're summoning Prime Monarch. And if the Monarch spell you banish is Prime Monarch, then you're in an incredibly tough spot. Because like it was so important to have 2 of those engraved to keep summoning, and then 1 on your field in the Monarch Mirror to keep shuffling them. So in decks, when I've mentioned things like Monarch and like Nekros, where I say like they generally have access to their whole deck at all times, Desires becomes less necessary because your deck is so consistent and you can just do whatever you want almost every game. Like Monarchs weren't that consistent, but if you didn't brick with Monarchs, then like, you had your whole deck at your fingertips at all times. So you already have access to like every card in your deck, that banishing something becomes a lot more like detrimental. In decks right now, in like ABC, like you don't really have a whole lot of searching going on. Your deck is pretty like contained. Desires is great. Like getting an extra card in ABC is great. Card is really good. And then I think I feel like when you make your deck over 40 to support desires, you're like willingly making your deck worse. You're like putting in cards that ordinarily you wouldn't put in your deck to support Pot of Desires.
I want to stop you right there, because when you're going on to the over 40 territory there, I mean, my opinion is kind of it's kind of irrelevant, whatever. But I'm just kind of like throwing out a different argument inside of the matter here. So you basically, your instinct there was to go over 40 cards. Incorrect, and that's like just kind of like the underlying fundamental basis of the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh psyche right now. Yes. Like I said, I mean, I don't agree or disagree with that. I mean, I don't really know. I haven't honestly thought about it as much as I should have. Mm-hmm. But if you take into consideration, like just this weekend at YCS Liverpool, a 47 card deck won the whole event. Someone like Billy Break has won with 60 cards. So why is it that there's this underlying understanding that 40 and the least cards, the better?
So Billy, I can explain pretty easily. Like that deck was like interesting. I believe top 16 of that event was in draft. So he actually he won the event, but he didn't. It wasn't constructed.
Sure, but I mean, it was obviously still pretty.
But yes. He still made the top 16 with a 60 card deck. That's like I'm obviously like putting more than 40 cards in your deck. Like if you put in 41 cards, you don't just like auto lose. It's just like generally speaking, you're trying to make your deck as consistent as possible. You want your deck like to win a game, you want your deck to be as unfair as possible, right? Like you don't want to like you want your deck to be unfair. When you win, you want your opponent to be like, "Man, that guy's deck was insane." Like that is like you don't want to win a fair game. Like or else like you're trying to make your deck as broken and good as possible, and you want to do the same broken good thing as much as you can. When you like the minimum deck size is 40, right? So like you have the highest chance of opening the specific cards you want when you have the least number of cards in your deck. When you start adding more cards to your deck, like okay, one thing I want to address, someone said you want your deck to be unfair but healthy. You don't like. I'm not saying that like I don't want there to be a deck in Yu-Gi-Oh that's like unfair. I would prefer a healthy format. However, that doesn't always happen. So every format, you want to be playing the best deck. You want to be playing the most unfair deck if you're trying to win. Like you want to find the best deck to play. Doesn't necessarily mean that like I want that to be the case. I don't necessarily want such a deck to exist. But if a deck exists, I will be playing the best deck, if that makes sense. So when you start adding more cards into your deck, then now like the things you're drawing are less consistent. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain. Like with 60 cards, like Billy's deck was really weird. Billy built his deck in a way, from what I understand, to like go to the long game every single time. And like having more cards was like a win condition. He would actually like grind his opponent out of resources, just almost making like 1-for-1 exchanges, just like with his BA Shadal deck, until they had literally no more cards they could play. And then Billy would just like still have cards. And like that's a very interesting way to build a deck that I don't think has really happened maybe before or even really since then. The deck in the 50 card deck or the 47 card deck that won Liverpool, that was weird. He literally just took a standard BA deck and just put in like ABC hate cards, and like I don't really have anything to say about that. Like that was just like odd. But like if you drew the AB, like BA is a deck that's like generally consistent enough that like you can usually like play, like you can make a Dante hopefully like most of the time, maybe even like a Beatrice, like, and he just put in a lot of cards that were auto win against ABC. When you play against a lot of ABC, then that's maybe you'll have a higher win rate. Like I haven't really looked into him too much, so I don't have a whole lot to comment on that specific deck. But generally speaking, how I've like looked at deck building, like in general, I may be wrong. Like there's a good chance I'm wrong. I have found that like putting more cards in your deck is generally bad. Like when you're putting desires in your deck, you're hopefully making your deck better. Like you're putting a card that really just says the cost is like significant, but it doesn't like there is a cost to Pot of Desires, but it isn't steep enough that like you won't. But it isn't steep enough that like drawing 2 cards is still like worth the cost. But when you're like putting more cards in your deck, you're like making your deck worse. Like if Desires wasn't legal, right? Most people would just be playing 40. Like almost everyone, you just play 40. There are like 40 Yu-Gi-Oh cards you would put in your deck, and you think these are the best 40 cards. Desires comes out, you cut, I guess, 3 of them, you put those in your deck. Then now, okay, like where is the number like 45 coming from? Like people playing like 45, and you're now putting cards that you wouldn't normally put in your deck into your deck. Like cards that you already decided weren't good enough to make it into your 40 card deck. Like why are they suddenly good enough to play? Because like Desires in your deck. Like if somebody randomly were to tell me like 43 with like Desires, like I would understand precisely like the logic behind that is like they had their 40 card deck, maybe they had their 39 card deck plus like Upstart, then they just put 3 Desires on top of it, and like Upstart being in your deck, like sometimes you'll banish it off Desires. That's actually like a somewhat legitimate like thing. So sure, But then like where are the extra 2 cards or extra, you know, like 4 or 5 cards coming from that were not in your deck previously? Is, I guess, the disconnect that I'm not quite like understanding.
What do you think of the idea of that as long as you have the correct ratios in your deck, then it doesn't actually matter how many cards you play? So for example, if you have like, I don't know, 2 engine to 3 trap or something like that for BA, or like, you know, 1 normal summon per 2 starter to 2 extender, that kind of ratio, at that point it starts to actually not be relevant to what the card number is, because statistically you'll be drawing the same ratios per hand. So like, what do you think about, you know, building your deck around that concept rather than sticking to a stringent number of the lower the better?
What I would say to that is that if Konami were to say tomorrow the minimum deck size is 80 and you can put 6 of a card in your deck, then like, yes, I think I would agree. But I guess what I was saying with just like the cards that wouldn't normally be in your deck, like you're putting like traps, but if they weren't like the traps, if you were playing like 5 traps, then you bump it to 10 traps, and you were playing like X amount of spells, you bump it to, you know, more spells. Like there's a reason you picked the first 5 traps and not the second 5 traps. Like the first 5 traps are better. Like even if you have like ratios that are the same, the cards' power levels are probably not going to be the same. Like the cards themselves may actually just like be worse. You know, like if you were playing 3 Solemn Strike and a Warning, and those were like your 4 traps, then you want to increase it to above 40. So you put in like 2 more traps, you know, to like, so you were playing 40 cards with 4 traps, now you're playing 60 cards and 6 traps. Like you can't put in 2 more warnings, you know, you can't put in 2 more strikes. Like you have to then choose cards that are like objectively worse, or that are like different at least. So just so like, I don't know, I feel like when you're still making compromises where you're putting worse cards in your deck that would not be in your deck. Like you would rather draw Solemn Strike generally than draw like Compulse. Because Solemn Strike at this point in time is like a better card. Like if you could play 5 Solemn Strikes, then maybe there would be a discussion there. But, or I mean, I guess there maybe like, maybe I would like concede this point. But I guess I can't think it. I just can't find it being. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Even if cards, as this guy says, even if cards do similar things and you put them in the same category, they are not necessarily the same card. Like they can be worse or better.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good way to look at it. Let's see if there was any other good questions. I kind of skipped over them because we did delve into quite a bit of this. We are way over time, but this has definitely been a really good discussion, and I'm glad to hear your points of view and stuff, and how you've played the game and where you've come from and stuff. Is there anything else that you really wanted to like go into or talk a little bit more extensively about before we wrap up?
No, I think I've covered most things.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think I'm done.
That's awesome. Well, guys, if you do have any further questions and stuff, you can leave them in the YouTube comment section, and I'll make sure to poke Ryan and have him answer you should you come up with anything else.
Sure. Message me on Facebook, I guess, if there's an incredibly pressing issue.
Yeah, sure.
Guess. I don't know.
You can even get him on Facebook.
If someone out there wants to ask me anything, I suppose. So,
yep, you've got all those options open to you guys. Make sure that you comment, like, subscribe and stuff, and thank you, of course, for coming out to watch this live if you're in the Twitch chat. I'm gonna upload this straight away to YouTube because I don't have a video scheduled for tonight. So if you did miss the first portion of this, then we'll be live in like an hour or something on YouTube. So thanks again for watching, and thanks so much to Ryan for joining me tonight and giving us this great insightful discussion. So that's everything for us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. So thanks everyone again, and we're signing out.